What's up, guys? Brady Fugel here. Welcome to Deeper Dives, the show for hardcore fans where we don't just dive deep, we dive deeper. Today we are talking Killswitch Engage, and with me, my guest today is Tom the Green Man. Tom, first of all, thank you so much for coming on and talking Killswitch with me. And the first question I always ask is, how did you get into Killswitch? When did you get into the band? What was your first album, your first experience with them? Anything along those lines?
Yeah, so I first got into Killswitch in about 2002 when they released the single My Last Serenade, which I remember just how like wowed I was by that song. At that time, I hadn't really heard anything, I think, as heavy as that, particularly that crushing guitar riff at the start of the
Yeah.
track. After you hear that kind of fading in
Hmm.
guitar chords, and then it absolutely slams with that riff. That was really my first experience seeing the video for that song on probably one of the music channels I was watching at the time. And yeah, I think that was my pretty much my entry point into Killswitch. Prior to then, I was into new metal stuff. Generally, was getting more and more into heavier things. But yeah, I think this was at that time probably introducing me to harsh vocals, screams. I'd never heard really many screams in metal up to that point, I think. And I was 17, so I was kind of used to a lot of the classic metal bands. As I say, some new metal bands that I was into. My entry to metal itself was really Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park in 2000. This was an album which I credit quite often. I have done on my channel before, credited it with cementing my love of metal because this album really just was like perfect at that time because I was an angsty teenager. I felt like I needed something like this to, uh, you know, just to kind of provide a bit of that therapy almost at that age, when you're going through so many emotions, your hormones are kind of all over the shop. And it was just like came at the right time in my life because I was, just a frustrated teenager. And this was like an outlet. It was just a heavy, aggressive, cathartic outlet. As well as being, kind of melodic and beautiful. You can hear a lot of influence, I think, from the Swedish Melodeath scene um, in this, well, with My Love Serenade, but also with Killswitch's music, I think in general. So, yeah, I guess that was my entry point. Was My Last Serenade? Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, and it's funny, like I could almost say the exact same thing you said, like literally almost to the T. But for me, it was Disarm the Descent and Incarnate. The first song I ever heard from Killswitch was This Fire Burns. That was probably, I first heard that probably back in like 2010, 2011, because I used to really be into pro wrestling. And it was CM Punk's theme song. So that was the first I ever heard of them. But at the time, like I was really young, like I didn't really explore my own music taste that much yet. So like I was like, oh, that's a cool song, and I'll listen to it. Then 2014 rolls around, and actually, this I was in high school at the time, and I was talking to this girl, and she was like, "You should check out this song if you like rock." And it was Always the song "Always" by Killswitch Engage, and I listened to that song, and I was into it immediately. Like that song hit me so hard. I ended up going on. I got introduced to it like right before I went on a cruise. Like my family, we used to love going on like Carnival cruises, and so I remember being on this cruise. It was like 8 days long, and I was just on this cruise ship in like the middle of the ocean for most of the time, and seeing these beautiful countries and stuff. And I remember Always was like the song that I was looping like that whole cruise, like just in my headphones. So like sometimes you have certain vivid memories associated with certain songs. Like that is a clear one for me. So Always was the first track I heard from the band. I loved it instantly. I then that was so that was actually the end of 2014. So that was yeah, end of 2014. So 2015 rolls around, and then the end of 2015 we started getting the pre-album singles to Incarnate. And Always is a song that it doesn't really have much heaviness. It's relatively melodic. There's some background screams, but that's it. And at the time, just like you said, like I wasn't really into to screamed vocals or metal. Like I was very much more of like a hard rock type person. Like I grew up on Linkin Park, like you said, Disturbed, Breaking Benjamin. Like that was the stuff I listened to. And Killswitch, they really were like the gateway band for me. Like, because I remember Strength of the Mind was the lead single off of Incarnate. And it was a lot heavier than what I was used to, but it had an amazing chorus, and I still loved the song despite the screaming. and then they dropped Hate by Design, and then the album dropped, and it just I'll talk about it later, but
Yeah, yeah,
basically everything you said about Alive or Just Breathing is me with Incarnate.
yeah,
So yeah, they are a crucial band for me as far as developing as a metalhead. They are my favorite metal band. Period. It was between them and Trivium for a while, but it's got to be them.
yeah.
So yeah, that was how I got into Killswitch Engage and honestly metal as a whole. So yeah, so how this will work is we're going to go through the band's chronological timeline. We're going to talk about each studio release. As well as maybe some major events that happened in the timeline, and I'm going to shout out a few other albums that might not be completely Killswitch related, but are worth bringing up. So the band was formed after the dissolution of the metalcore bands Overcast and Aftershock. The original lineup was Jesse Leach on vocals, Adam Dukovitz on drums, Joel Stratzel on guitar, and Mike D'Antonio on bass. The band recorded a demo in 1999 featuring initial versions of future songs. They then released their debut self-titled album in the year 2000. Tom, what are your thoughts on that debut self-titled album?
It's one I don't go back to very often. Out of all the records in their discography, this is one of the ones I definitely don't revisit so much. I think it's a very hard-hitting, raw, unfiltered Killswitch album that I think Jesse sounds great, but his vocals are always to me on that record sound a little bit separate from the music, which I find slightly off-putting with my experience of the debut record. But a lot of good stuff on here. It's still to me always been a pretty solid record. I feel like it is somewhat um I don't want to be disrespectful to it and call it like the template to Alive or Just Breathing, but it feels like the first step towards that record. It feels like Alive or Just Breathing was like the final product of it in some ways, because two of the songs from the debut album appear on Alive or Just Breathing as well. It's like a part of it is in its almost DNA anyway. And I feel like that carries over. I mean, still some pretty awesome tracks on this one, and it has one of my favorite Killswitch songs, Temple from the Within, to open it. Irreversal. I think it's Numb, Sick and Dies I particularly enjoy on this record. There's some bangers on it, but it is just a little raw, unrefined, and I just feel like Alive or Just Breathing is kind of the final like and better version overall with better songs. Kind of,
Yeah.
yeah,
So again, like I totally agree with pretty much everything you said. This album to me has always came off as more of a demo than an actual studio album. So like I'll eventually do a Killswitch Engage discography ranking, but I probably won't even include this album because, like you said, so two of the tracks, Vita Infra and Temple from the Within, appear on Alive or Just Breathing. They also they re-recorded In the Unblind. That's featured as a B-side on Alive or Just Breathing as well. And then the track Irreversal was then a B-side on End of Heartache. So that's four tracks from this album that ended up being on future releases. So I
yeah,
personally consider it more of a demo than anything.
yeah,
I will shout out the track Rusted Embrace. I think that's a really good deep cut on here that is just singularly to this on this album. So that's a track that I've definitely came back to over the years, and it's very raw, like you said, and very unfiltered. I think you used both of those words, which I do think is something that's on its side overall. But
yeah,
this isn't really a record that I come back to as a whole because the tracks that appear on future releases, I listen to those tracks on those future releases. I don't really listen to these versions of the tracks because the future releases, they sound more, better produced, better performed. So for me, there's just no reason to come back to these versions of those songs on this album. All great songs, but literally they would end up doing this exact same stuff better on future releases. And it is a little bit unrefined. I like how heavy it is. I mean, obviously, like in the Unblind, like I just talked about, like that track pretty much sounds like full on '90s in flames in the best way possible, as does a lot of the stuff on here. But it's
yeah,
just it's a very easy album to skip in the Killswitch catalog because like we're about to talk about, the albums that follow this one are just so much more important to the genre and defining in Killswitch's career and just better overall that this album. I feel like to be a Killswitch fan, you don't really have to spend a whole lot of time with this record, and I honestly haven't, with the exception of Rusted Embrace, like I just mentioned. So yeah, shortly after the release of this album, the band was signed to Roadrunner Records. They immediately began recording their second album, and Alive or Just Breathing was released in 2002. So Tom, you already gave some thoughts on Alive or Just Breathing, but I'm curious, what are your extended thoughts on this album?
Yeah, I mean it what a great record. I mean it's out of all of the albums that sort of came out in that era that were, I don't know how to describe it really, like the new metal era, that sort of early 2000s period, the metalcore albums somewhat as well, so early metalcore albums, I guess you would say. This is the one I feel like I most regularly revisit, still to this day. And it is like a cornerstone record for me. And growing up, as I'm kind of alluded to earlier, it almost like I have a kind of spiritual bond with the record because it was such an eye-opening experience hearing My Last Serenade for the first time. And it's interesting over the years that other songs have kind of emerged more and more as being songs I like almost more than My Last Serenade now. I kind of have that warmth about My Last Serenade because it introduced me to the band, but there are now songs on this record, like every single song is fantastic. I mean, that opener, Numbered Days, is just, I mean,
Crushing, dude. Yeah, so crushing.
yeah, the rhythmic guitar stuff Killswitch do, I always think is so inventive and like really interesting. And they sort of build up all of these like crazy fast rhythms and but then they release into like big open choruses and wonderful melodies, and just they just have that, I think, that switch up ability, that the production's always great, and particularly on this record I love the production on Alive or Just Breathing. It is Adam D, isn't it? You know what a great producer as well as a musician he is to sort of, you know
Adam D is
and
he is crazy talented, man. And everything
yeah.
he does, he is just crazy talented in everything related to music.
um and yeah, I mean, as well as My Last Serenade, uh, yeah, I mean it's one of these things where I could read out the whole track list for this album pretty much. To the Sons of Man, Temple from the Within, I've already said. The Element of One is certainly one that, again, I particularly have enjoyed. That was a single as well, which I didn't realize actually initially that was even a single for a while. And yeah, I mean that whole song and the bridge in particular is just so good. Vida Infra, which obviously was on the first album, but yeah, Fixation on the Darkness is a good one as well on there. Um, yeah, and I guess it was a seminal record for the band. It was like the album that got them well known. And I can remember, although I kind of don't want to jump ahead to Ends of Heartache, we're not there yet, but I can remember feeling sad after this record that Jesse departed, because that was before I knew anything about Howard Jones. So I can remember feeling very sad about that at the time because I loved Alive or Just Breathing just so much. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, like you said, like this is an amazing record. It is a super important, maybe the most important metalcore album, period, because I don't think metalcore would be where it is today if it wasn't for this album. Like this record wrote the blueprint for metalcore, just in the way that it combines the hardcore and extreme metal influence with these very pristine and clean sounding parts. And not every song does both evenly. Some tracks, I would say, there's overall more of the heavy stuff on here, and there's songs that don't do any melodic stuff. But this is with this album. It's funny because this was actually one of the last Killswitch albums I got into. I got into it, I think it was like late 2020 when I first got into this album. So it was one of the very last ones that I listened to, and it just it's one of those records where I'm like, why have I not been listening to it this whole time? Like, because I first got in the band, like I said, like 2014, and then it took this long for me to discover the record. And this is a very special record to me because it was so. This was like my soundtrack to pretty much the entire first half of 2021. So we're still kind of coming off of COVID, and the reason why it's so special to me is because I had an uncle who passed away, who I was close with. He passed away in at the end of March that year. So I remember visiting him in the hospital, visiting him at home, and listening to this album. So I very much associate this album with that period of my life. And those it's in particular it's those melodic parts like the choruses of tracks like Number Days and Self Revolution and the closer Rise Inside, like This album is so raw, but it shines just because of how emotional it is. Like sometimes when an album is so raw, the emotion shines through a lot more. And Jesse's vocals on here, although maybe they're not the most like technically sound, like he just the emotion he conveys in his both his harsh vocals and his clean vocals is just it's so amazing. This is another record because it is relatively it's one of Killswitch's more extreme records, I would say. So this is another record that definitely kind of helped me lean more into extreme metal. Um, and something that I think this album does really, really well is the song structures. Like because it manages to like metalcore is a genre that falls victim way too much nowadays of just the formula. Like the formula is what wears on me with a lot of these modern metalcore bands. And
Yeah,
but this album, like every song on here, like these song structures are so unpredictable. It incorporates these clean choruses in ways that are very creative.
yeah,
Sometimes they kind of come and then they evolve throughout. Sometimes there's kind of a part one and a part two to the chorus. Sometimes they just come in a random spot or they have a breakdown thrown. Like there's the structures. These songs are just so winding and so unpredictable, and it makes them so enjoyable to me. Um, it's such a dynamic album, such an emotional album. I could shout out, like you said, every song in here. I did break out this. I don't really buy CDs anymore, but I did break out the CD collection for this one. So like I can just run through these track lists. My Last Serenade is amazing. That's a track that I've been working on doing a full band cover of for a while. So I mentioned before, like I was you might remember I mentioned before I was working on a Killswitch song to do a full band cover of for YouTube. It's My Last Serenade. But they're just so much there's so much work. It takes forever to do them. But
I bet.
Life to Lifeless is a track that just so effortlessly incorporates some odd timing which I mean, Killswitch being this early into their career, like they're already getting to this kind of experimental nature that they did with this album, and that's something that's kind of present on all of their albums here and there, just some odd time ideas on a few songs. Life to Lifeless is very much the one for this one. Just Barely Breathing, that just doomy intro is awesome, and then you get the tremolo riffing, great. The interlude track on here, Without a Name, like
Yeah,
interlude tracks are not something I enjoy. Like anybody who watches my reviews will know, like I don't like songs like this. But this track, it works because it transforms all the way through because it starts and it's so like nice and beautiful sounding, and then you just this this cloud of darkness just overwhelms all of that beauty like halfway through. It's like this beautiful field of flowers that just like gets absorbed by darkness and you just see all the flowers dying. Like that's my visual. That's what I visualize when I hear this song Without a Name. Um, the B-sides are great on this record too. Like India and Blind, like I said, it sounds like it could be on In Flames' Gesture Race, like in the riffing, and then When the Balance is Broken has this really stomping, clean chorus, and again some really great riffing, another odd time breakdown at the end. So definitely the B-sides are worth checking out on this record. And yeah, this is just it's an amazing record. It's one of their best, easily, and a super important album to the genre. After the release, the band embarked on their first nationwide U.S. tour. Adam D ended up switching from being the drummer to being the lead guitarist, and Tom Gomes took up the drummer position. After getting married, Jesse Leach ended up falling into a deep depression, which eventually led to him quitting the band. He was replaced by former Blood Has Been Shed vocalist Howard Jones. And something I thought interesting was the vocalist that apparently tried out for Killswitch that didn't make the cut. So apparently it was Phil Labonte of All That Remains,
yeah,
Brad Sabati
yeah.
of Moving Through, and James Hart of 18 Visions. So it's pretty cool that all those vocalists tried out, and then obviously they made the right decision choosing Howard. Like the other three guys are great too, um,
100%.
they definitely made the right decision choosing Howard. And the band ended up playing Ozfest in 2003. Tom Gomes ended up leaving the band shortly after joining on drums, and he was replaced by Justin Foley. And then their third album, The End of Heartache, was released in May of 2004. It has since been certified gold here in the U.S. Tom, what are your thoughts on The End of Heartache?
Yeah, and another one of my top albums from the band for sure, The End of Heartache. I mean, Howard just hit the ground running, I think, with their sound. And I think, is always going to be with a band that's so popular, the debate of which singer is better. I just think that Jesse and Howard bring different things to the Killswitch palette, essentially. I've personally always said I love Jesse's screams, absolutely love them, but Howard's cleans and his choruses are something else. And that's kind of where, I mean, Jesse's choruses are amazing too, right? It's very difficult to kind of really say who I prefer. I suppose for Killswitch, I always felt Jesse's a great fit and a natural fit. But the Howard albums, two in particular, including End of Heartache, are absolutely epic records. And I think I'm glad they went with Howard because I mean I can't have seen it really working with Phil Labonte and his voice and his vocals, knowing all that remains somewhat. Or maybe they would have made it work, but the songs on End of Heartache feel made for Howard Jones, like Rose of Sharon. Those vocal lines in that song are huge. I can't imagine Phil Labonte nailing those vocal lines like Howard does. Um, and End of Heartache itself, the title track, I mean, I can remember hearing that song for the first time. It's in the Resident Evil Apocalypse
Mhm.
soundtrack.
Yeah.
As horror fans, we probably know that. Brady, you might have even been about to mention it. Yeah, and a lot of good memories with this album, actually, for me. A lot of good memories because it's kind of not been so much me necessarily revisiting it. It's revisited me a lot throughout my life because
Good way of putting it. Good
it
way of
got
putting it.
played when I was a student. Um, there was a rock and metal night at a club where I went to university in obviously in England, and you know they would play Rose of Sharon full blast, and it would just like be so awesome to hear that on big speakers. I mean, better to hear the band live playing it, of course, but hearing that on those speakers in that nightclub was just amazing. And then it kind of, when I moved to London in the early 2010s, they would play Rosa Sharon, Ends of Heartache, A Bid Farewell, the album opener. Um, and so I got kind of, you know, the songs played without me necessarily often having to, because I used to go out a lot to rock and metal nightclubs, mostly at university and then later in my life when I moved to London. So it's interesting how they kind of had a two-way relationship with this record that I love revisiting it myself, but it has revisited me a lot and provided some great moments with friends who also enjoy this kind of music. You
It
know,
sounds like it sounds like this album and you are soulmates.
pretty much a bit like Alive or Just Breathing is kind of like the sort of album that started it all, and this again is another one just kind of just continued the bond, the relationship with Killswitch, if you like. Yeah, and yeah, it's just an amazing record, like I say. I mean, the thing with Killswitch I often find is a lot of my favorite songs. I don't want to spoil the end of the video because I know we're naming our favorites later, right? But a lot of my favorite songs do tend to be singles, not always. Well, always is a great song, but you know what I mean. But yeah, a lot of my favorite songs do tend to be the single. They know which singles I think to pick from their records that are the really hard hitting tracks. In a lot of cases, again, not always, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is a fantastic emotional, again, like we were saying with the Live or Just Breathing. And I think Howard's voice carries a natural emotion with it, as with Jesse, but his really does project really well. So live, they sound amazing with Howard. I think if you see live gigs with Howard, he has a great live performance element to him as well, a great performance element in the way he is on stage presence wise. And I think of that with this record because I've seen kind of live videos on YouTube with Howard as well quite a bit. But yeah, so I just think that the time that Howard was with the band, in particular with this record and the next one, which we're going to obviously talk about next, but it was like he was fire with this band and special, the albums he did with them. I think I'm glad Jesse returned now. I probably wouldn't have necessarily been glad he returned initially, maybe, was because I did love the Howard records quite a bit, apart from maybe one, which again we'll come to later. But yeah, I think his stint with the band was fantastic, and he, is going to be remembered as fondly, if not, some people prefer Howard. I think, as fondly as Jesse will be remembered because he's just a great vocalist. Yeah, but don't want to spend all the time talking about the vocalists again. The instrumentals on this album absolutely, slap. They are fantastic. Rhythmic arrangements once again. Adam is brilliant on here. Justin sounds incredible as well on the drums. The drumming on here feels like it's particularly stand out. I think. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, well, this is just another metalcore classic. I think when people think of 2000s metalcore, like this is probably the first album that most people think of. It just there's nothing that I could say that hasn't already been said about this record. But
Mm.
it's an amazing record. Howard's material to me, like so overall, like I will say, like I do prefer the Jesse albums, but I still love the Howard material as well. I think the reason I prefer Jesse's albums is because I think Howard's albums are a little bit more accessible and a little bit more
Yeah.
radio friendly.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a
Definitely.
bad way, not in a bad way, but that just I don't know. That just shows my personal musical tastes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the emotion still shines through. The vocals are undeniably superior on here than they were on the first two records. And there's a lot of killer songs on here still. Rose of Sharon, like that's a song that is also very special to me. It's I remember so I had two dogs growing up, and they both passed away about a year apart from each other, and like the song is about losing a loved one, and Rose of
Mm.
Sharon was a song that was there for me on those days, and really helped me through that. And so that's a very special song to me. The title track obviously is amazing. Really good deep cut on this album is the track "World Ablaze." That's one of my favorite
Oh,
tracks on here.
good
Again,
one. Yeah.
it brings in some odd time ideas, and then like
Mm.
later in the song when you get kind of Howard doing that call and response thing with himself when he's saying "Set this world ablaze" and then screaming "Let it all fall," like the really really epic ending to the song. Um, but again, got the CD for this one. Have to shout that out. When Darkness Falls, amazing chorus. The interlude tracks on here also are great as well. Embers Rise and Hail, two like very good, and they actually do add to the album. They feel like transitions between songs. So again, not a compliment that I give to a lot of records, but yeah, End of Heartache, super important album, and the introduction of Howard Jones to mainstream metal, and that which is something that changed mainstream metal, I would say. After the release of this album, the band continued to tour, which included playing Ozfest again. The End of Heartache title track was featured as the main theme to Resident Evil Apocalypse, and they released a live DVD in 2005 titled "Set This World Ablaze" after the song from this album. In May of 2006, "This Fire Burns" was released in collaboration with WWE, and it was later featured as the theme song for CM Punk. The song would later be featured as a B-side on the band's fourth album, As Daylight Dies, which was released in November of 2006. The album has since been certified platinum. What are your thoughts on As Daylight Dies?
I mean, I think you've touched on it with your comments about how accessible the Howard era is. This one to me is the very accessible record actually the next one as well, but this one is one of the very accessible records of the Killswitch Howard era. Very catchy, super memorable, hooks all over the place, great guitar riffs, and again, the guitar riffs stay in your head as well on this record. I find thinking of I think it's the which one is it? It's gone out. My Curse, yeah. The riff in that track always
Iconic.
sticks in my head
Yeah.
when I start listening to it. Yeah, and it's really good. It's interesting with this one that when I was preparing for this, I noticed that the reviews were super positive. I mean, it's a great record, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily for me their best record. It's a really good one, very accessible, as we both said, commercially very successful. But it surprises me that it got like so many really high scores, in a way, because I think it's a great album. But for me, like, it kind of Killswitch have slightly better records, in my opinion, in terms of, like you said, that less predictable song structure. I think the song structures on this are maybe a little more predictable. Um, on the whole, not in every song, but yeah, I think it's a great album though. I love the Arms of Sorrow and remember the video for that one. There's some deep cuts on here that I really enjoyed too. I mean, For You, what
Yeah.
a song! Love
Yep.
that one. Um, and I think it's got a very good, it flows well too. I think you could say that although almost about every single Killswitch record, that all of them, maybe apart from one or two, just have a super nice flow to them, front to back. Um, oh, Reject Yourself, that album closer is also one that I do really like. I revisit it quite often. It's probably, if I had to rank the albums again, I think I did an album ranking a while back. I think it's always about middle. This one for me. Really like the album. And I tend to find myself picking out songs though from it, perhaps to listen to again. It's not an album I tend to listen to in full. But strong Howard record. I can see why people love it. Really accessible, really memorable, as I've kind of repeated myself a bit now. But yeah, great album again.
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is another one that I do have on CD. And another album that I really love. I think probably End of Heartache and Daylight Dies, like together, are probably the two most beloved albums in the Killswitch catalogs. Alive or Just
Yeah.
Breathing feels like more of like a cult classic to for like the really hardcore fans. Whereas the majority of Killswitch fans, I feel like these are the two records that everyone loves the most. But I actually slightly prefer this album over End of Heartache, which I think might be a hot take. But I really love this album. The singles are phenomenal for one. Obviously, My Curse is simply iconic. Like it's arguably the metalcore song. Like it's one of the first songs like anybody ever hears when they're getting into the genre. But Arms of Sorrow is amazing. And this is Absolution too. One thing I like on this record is that I like how Adam D's backing vocals are a little bit more prominent on here. Like those are two songs that you hear quite a bit on. Also, Break the Silence. That's an awesome song later in the record. Desperate Times is amazing. Like
Oh yeah, that's
the
actually a really good
despair
one
in
too.
that chorus just rings through
Yeah.
so well. And I love how it's got like a slow churning pace to it. Great underrated deep cut. I love For You. That's another track that I was going to shout out to. Brings in some more of those odd time ideas. And
Yeah.
it's got a really good chorus. Unbroken is just epic nonstop the whole way, and Still Beats Your Name, Eye of the Storm. Every song on here is so good. And then also the B sides. I got to shout out the B sides again. B1 has this really cool lead section right away that I think is cool. It brings to mind more like that mellow death influence. Let the Bridges Burn is great, and obviously this fire burns. A great song that a lot of people. It probably was a gateway into the band for many people, given that it was on WWE. And this song to me, it feels like a logical successor to the last record. It may not. If I had to give this record a criticism, it'd be that it doesn't really take the band's sound anywhere because it kind of just has the same exact style as End of Heartache. It's still good. Like I said, I still love this album, probably slightly more than End of Heartache. But the emotion shines through just as well as it did on the first few albums. And there's very little negative I could say about this record. It's still a record that I love. Um, and yeah, after the record was released, Adam D actually had to temporarily leave the band due to back problems. So he kind of went on a little hiatus, and a few different musicians subbed in for him on the touring. But the band also began working on their next album. The second self-titled album, Killswitch Engage, ended up being released in June of 2009. What are your thoughts on the second Killswitch Engage self-titled, 2009 self-titled?
Yeah, I believe we covered this on And Is It That Bad a while back, and I think it might have even been my choice for it. I thought it was an interesting one to cover. It is one of my least favorite records from the band, but saying that, you know, Killswitch don't have any bad records, I would say. And this for me is just touching on what you were saying about As Daylight Dies a bit. They were falling into that formula for me. By this point, particularly, I felt like the formula was with Howard was getting very, very familiar. So it didn't feel like there was anything much new that was really brought to Killswitch 2.0 with Howard Jones at the helm. But saying that there were songs I love, and I don't know if this is a hot take that I really love the single Starting Over. I remember listening to that and really digging it. Really catchy chorus again. Save Me and Reckoning, two awesome tracks on here as well that I enjoy again singles I believe. And it's a solid record. Again, super accessible, but I didn't feel for this one, and I think this is a criticism that comes up on Wikipedia in the reviews part, or the reception part of it, where they talk about Production wise, it doesn't hit me the same as other records. To me, it lacks some of the awesome aggression as well that I tend to side with a little more with Killswitch. My favorite albums do tend to be the ones with the more of the aggression. I think there than not. I say that thinking of a couple of albums that I don't like as much. But yeah, you know what I mean. It's I don't feel like it is just not as creative for me. It's accessible and it's got some beautiful Howard moments. I think that's the highlight, and I think that's what we said on Is It That Bad? That I think I saved this. I'd be surprised if I didn't save this. Um, but yeah, it felt like it was the Howard Jones moments stood out the most, and yeah,
Yeah,
good album, but it comes quite near the bottom for me in the discog.
once again, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I do like Starting Over is good. I like the track Reckoning, and then later in the record, I Would Do Anything is a solid track. But aside from that, this album it's kind of underwhelming. It comes off like a record of bonus tracks for me.
Yeah,
And like I said, it has its moments. There's a few memorable ones, but overall, like, it's noticeably undercooked. I also agree that the production is kind of underwhelming. Definitely not Adam D's best production, although and he's usually great at it. But yeah, this record doesn't really hit me the same. I'd probably say it'd be between this and the debut as would be up for my least favorite album from them. Um, and musically it's just kind of bland. Like there's stuff on here that's just very simplistic at times. Howard is definitely the standout on this album. Like
yeah,
also not just vocally but also lyrically. Like a lot of these lyrics are rather like dark and full of despair,
mm,
which might show just where his head was at the time, considering what we're about to talk about. But
yeah, yeah,
musically, it's just there isn't a whole lot there for me. And it's not a bad record, but it's mid. That's the best word to
mm,
say it. It's a mid album. Like if I was on Is It That Bad for this when you guys talked about it, I probably would have given it a sideways. It's very, and for Killswitch being my favorite metal band, like that's especially saying something. The fact that I have hardly ever came back to this album except for maybe one or two songs. So
yeah.
yeah, not their best. I don't own this one on CD either. um,
Me neither. Yeah,
yeah, so after this record, while touring, actually, this is something that I actually didn't know until I did my research for this video. While they're touring, Howard Jones actually temporarily left the band, and former vocalist Jesse Leach, as well as all the remains vocalist Phil Labonte, filled in temporarily until Jones returned to the band. So this would have been in like 2010 or so. I didn't know that happened, so that's interesting. But after that, Adam D started a side project called Times of Grace, featuring him doing all the instruments and all the songwriting, and Jesse Leach took over most of the lead vocals on the album, which is interesting when you think about it. Like they were Jesse Leach is the former vocalist at the time of Killswitch Engage, right? So Howard Jones like is in the band, and then Adam D decides to do a side project with the band's former vocalist while they were still touring with Howard. So that's a really interesting dynamic when you think about it.
yeah.
But I
Interesting.
had to, and this isn't a Killswitch Engage album, but I had to shout it out because I absolutely love this record. It was The Hymn of a Broken Man is the name of the record. It was released in January of 2011, and it's a brilliant like twist on the Killswitch Engage formula because there is stuff on here that sounds like it sounds like Killswitch, but at the same time, um, there's stuff on here that also is a little bit different. Like for example, like Fight for Life, Live in Love, and the title track, Hymn of a Broken Man, Worlds Apart. Like these are all songs that could probably fit on a Killswitch record, but then you also have tracks like Until the End of Days, which has these like really like drastic like mood shifts. It gets really heavy and then really like desolate. The Forgotten One is like a bluesy acoustic ballad, and then the closer Fall from Grace is an amazing closer that it's also a ballad. Adam D actually does most of the singing on this song, and he's a great job. So I had to shout out this record. It's also like Jesse's vocals on here. Like we'll see with future records that he will like it's a drastic improvement from what he did on Live or Just Breathing. But given that this was the first time, like aside from maybe some lower profile releases in the interim period, like the jump from Alive or Just Breathing to this record is just absolutely insane. Like his vocals on this record are unbelievable. And if there are any Killswitch fans, watching this and that haven't listened to the Hymn of a Broken Man, I highly, highly recommend it. It rivals to me even some of Killswitch's like best material for me. It's genuinely a really good record, a dark horse record you may even say.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I haven't listened to it yet, so I need to check that out.
Highly,
Definitely.
highly recommend it. Worlds Apart, Willing is amazing, and the Closure Fall from Grace are the three tracks that I would most recommend for this album. But they're all great. This is like a no skips record for me. So I had to shout out Times of Grace because I love that record so much. But yeah, after that, the band began recording their sixth album. Although shortly after starting it, Howard Jones quit the band. He was eventually replaced by former vocalist Jesse Leach again, which is another interesting dynamic. I mean, how often does that happen where the original vocalist quits and then comes back like later on? Like, very rare that that happens. But they eventually finished recording the album with Jesse, and Disarm the Descent was released in April 2013. It's also worth noting that the track In Due Time, the lead single from this record, was nominated for a Grammy. Tom, what are your thoughts on Disarm the Descent?
Yeah, that's interesting what you're saying there about, yeah, there aren't too many bands where Jesse or where the singer comes back having left. I would have to really think hard about that to find many. But I mean, what a comeback this was, and this album is again another all-time favorite for me. And really, I'm pretty sure I put this somewhere on my top 10 albums of 2013 list when I did that year. I didn't actually do the year end list for 2013 in 2013. It ended up being, I think, when I did my channel. But this was in there. I'm pretty sure it's an awesome record, a great comeback album for the band as well as Jesse coming back. Um, has the ferocity, I think, of Alive or Just Breathing about it. It is its own thing. I don't feel like it is a repeat of Alive or Just Breathing as such, but it carries on the spirit, kind of almost the zeitgeist of that album for me. And I fell in love with it. I completely fell in love with this in 2013. And, so many standout songs on here. It's another album where I would struggle to find a song here that I don't like as much. Maybe one or two, actually, that I'm not as keen on. But against the load that I absolutely love. So, it's like apples and oranges in a way. I mean, Hell in Me, great opening song. Beyond the Flames is awesome. You know, yeah, just read out all the tracks, shall I? A Turning Point, bit of a dark horse song on this record, I think. What a song! And that outro is amazing on Turning Point. Yeah, always, as you mentioned earlier, being your kind of was you say that was your entry point? So because the
Yeah,
girl
that
that you
was
knew
that was the
introduced you
song that made
to,
me a fan. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of it's kind of heavy and doomy, isn't it? At the same time
Yeah,
as
I,
being
I would
quite
I
a
would I would call it a
romantic song.
ballad. I would call it a ballad, but it's like a very it's definitely Killswitch's take on a ballad for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this was the year actually I moved to London, if I remember correct. Yes, 2013 was the year I actually moved. I worked in London in the late 2000s from 2008, but I actually moved there physically in 2013. And so it's one of those albums, along with Alice in Chains, The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here. Maybe that's a bit of a dark horse, that one as well. We did do Alice in Chains before. Um, but yeah, I think this was an album that reminds me somewhat of my moving of house in that year. So, which is interesting. It's another album we haven't talked about yet that reminds me of my move last year. So, there you go. It's like Killswitch are involved in like quite key milestones in my life and various things. I think the only thing they haven't been associated with is a relationship yet. So, but yeah, pretty much every other key milestone in my life at Killswitch have been there along the way. So that as well as a little anecdote there. So yeah, awesome, awesome album, so good. I love this one. I think this flip flops with End of Heartache in my top two albums.
Well,
Absolutely ripping record for me.
nice, yeah. So you rank it pretty high then. Wow, okay.
Yeah,
So, for me, like this is an absolutely triumphant return from Jesse in what is one of the band's heaviest and most inspired albums to date. I think it's you can make the argument that this is A, their heaviest, and B, their most inspired. Like very, very valid claims. I don't know if I would put them at number one, but I think anybody who argues that like it's that's at least you can make a good argument for that.
yeah,
It's undeniably metalcore through and through. Like it's definitely a lot more edgy and heavier and more aggressive and less accessible than all three of the Howard albums were for me. Like kind of like I think you put it in a good way when you said that it kind of has the spirit of Alive or Just Breathing, but at the same time, like it feels very new. One thing
yeah.
I like about this record that I wanted to shout out is Jesse's screams on this record. This album, like to me, it's production wise, I think it's sonically very unique in the Killswitch catalog because Jesse's vocals, Jesse's screams in particular, sound very unique on this record as opposed to the other records that he would do in the future. And he sounds great. It's just the perfect balance between raw but also like clear. Like I said, "Always" was the song that got me into the band. Just an amazing song, a very special song to me. And I already shared that story about how I was listening to it on that cruise ship a lot. That really sent the song home to me. And then after Incarnate dropped, that's when this was the first album that I ended up really going back and listening to it full, and I loved it just as much. I do have it on CD, of course, got to shout that out. And yep, and then so I can shout out many of these tracks, in particular the songs that I think really resonated with me when I first listened to the album would be Beyond the Flames. That's a great one. Turning Point is amazing. All We Have is amazing, and also In Due Time, the lead single. Like that, I
Oh,
love
great
the
single,
chorus.
yeah, yeah.
Love the chorus of that song. Like Jesse's vocals, like I don't remember, I love Howard's vocals too. They're both very unique vocalists, but I love the rasp in Jesse's clean vocals, and I think In Due Time, his vocals in that chorus best exemplify that. And you know, and other songs throughout the years have really jumped out at me even more. Like The Call is a track that I think I needed a little bit more time with, but now it's one of my favorites on the record. Same thing with No End in Sight. And then yeah, and there's also some great B-sides on the record that we could shout out. But every song on here slaps. The opener "Hell in Me" is actually epic, and it's a very triumphant return from Jesse, and a return to just some more very inspired musically, very inspired songwriting.
Yeah.
We got that self-titled record,
Right.
and I think like I said, I shouted out "Times of Grace" earlier. Like I think if you listen to that "Times of Grace" record and then listen to this record after, like there is somewhat of like a logical succession there, especially in Jesse's vocals. That's just another reason to listen to that Times of Grace record. But yeah, a great record. 2013, this would probably be my number two for 2013. Like I still love it, but I mean, you had Alter Bridge Fortress in 2013.
Oh, yeah.
So this
That's
is
a great album, though. That might have been my number one actually for that year,
yeah.
thinking about it
So
now. Yeah.
so this has got to be number two. But an amazing record. The band continued to tour after the release. In late 2015, they released a track called "Loyalty" to promote Game of Thrones, actually, and that track was featured as a B-side on what would be the band's next album, Incarnate, which was released in March of 2016. This was something I thought interesting. This was actually the band's best performing album. It hit number six on the Billboard 200. That's the highest Killswitch has ever scored on the Billboard 200. So I
Okay.
think that's interesting because this is not like one of the band's most beloved albums, which I'll have some thoughts about. But I'm very curious. What are your thoughts on Incarnate?
Yeah, I guess this is lined up for a Dark Horse Discs episode, so we'll also talk about it in some detail then. I think it's a great pick for Dark Horse Discs as well because it does kind of fall in. It's not quite mid-Lyra syndrome, but it sort of is. It is an album that could be easy to forget about it if you're less familiar, if you're just a hardcore fan of the first Killswitch albums or the most recent one. So I I have to admit, I wasn't super big on the album initially. It has grown, it's been a grower for me. So I can see why you love this though, Brady, because if this was the first album I discovered from Killswitch, I'd love it, I think probably as much as you. It has all the kind of Killswitch elements that I enjoy still about the band. For me, there was an element of familiarity with some of the tracks. I could, at the time, I found it difficult to separate completely. The fact I felt like by this point I knew Killswitch very, very well, and that I didn't feel at the time I was first listening to the album that there felt like there was anything super new on here that I hadn't digested before. But then, kind of revisiting the album, I feel like it does have some surprises on here. It does have the dark horse elements, songs which kind of like revisiting. I feel like I didn't appreciate enough originally. And like there's some really great stuff for me. For whatever reason, I think I'm different from a lot of people's thoughts on this or reviews I've seen or people's favorite songs on this record that I've seen on YouTube because I really enjoy tracks right at the end of this record, particularly. I think it falls on me. Love that song, and it kind of has this shoegazy bit in the middle of that track. And as a huge shoegaze fan, as you know, you probably know I am, really enjoyed that. You've got like We Carry On is another one of my favorites, and I love the closing track Ascension too. So weirdly, it's the second half of this album that has most of my favorite cuts on it, whereas I noticed a lot of people quote the first half as their favorite half. So yeah, but I do respect it a lot. I think it's still a great album in the discography and absolutely 100% Dark Horse disc material through and through. If I were to rank it, it'd probably be fifth or sixth, I think, for me.
Nice. Yeah, this is like I would love to talk about this album on Dark Horse. That would be that would be a great one. Of course, I have to have it on CD.
Yeah,
This was probably the first album I think I probably bought from them on CD. And it's just there's not enough I could say about this album. It's one of my absolute favorite albums of all time, easily in the top three. It's so like it's tremendously underrated. I think now, given context of because before this, when I first listened to it, it was my first full album experience with the band. But now that I have context, it kind of has that same kind of spiritual, deep energy of a Times of Grace record. And but they kind of did make it into the Killswitch sound for this one, and it's a logical successor to Disarm the Descent, and for me, an improvement. And it has a lot more of those dynamic and almost even progressive at times song structures. I think a
yeah,
track like "Embrace the Journey Upraised" and also "It Falls on Me" are great instances of that. They're songs that really transform all the way through. It's deeply emotional. The angst really shines through. A very vivid memory that I have with this album when it first dropped is I remember because I was in high school at the time, and we took a field trip to the Art Institute of Chicago. So I was in this art museum walking around, like, because I think I had to like take notes on the paintings and stuff, and all the different arts and all that. And I remember I had this album in my headphones like the whole time, and it's a heavy album as all of Killswitch's albums are, but like it's such a beautiful album. Like there's several moments on here that just the chorus of Strength of the Mind, Just Let Go in its entirety, Quiet Distress with the acoustic intro, and it's got an
yeah.
amazing
I like that.
chorus. And then the heavier cuts are amazing as well. Alone I Stand is a phenomenal opener. The verses, I remember this was kind of a joke at the time among the band and the fans. The verses of Alone I Stand were played in a 17/16 time signature. So just, just Adam D being Adam D. So I had to, I thought that was funny. And now that if you look on the back of the album, I was going to make this point, but I'm just realizing it's actually on the back of the album on the track listing. The album is actually split in two parts. So the first part is was meant to be. I remember hearing this in interviews. The first part was meant to be a lot more hopeful and bright and optimistic and positive, and then the second half was meant to be a lot darker. And that really does reflect in some of these songs, like "The Great Deceit." That's a really heavy track on here, and it just got this dark chorus, and it really amplifies the band's extreme metal influences more so than any other track on here. And even a track like "We Carry On," which might be like lyrically positive. It's sonically a dark song. Like it's
Mhm.
very filled with
Yeah,
despair. Um, the B sides again. I have to shout out the B sides on here. They're all three of them are tremendously underrated. Like I'm forgetting the name of it, but okay. Well, Loyalty, like I already talked about, like that's a great one. That's a song that kind of has that ambient type outro with like those clean guitars that really ring. So that's a great one. Triumph Through Tragedy is crushing. Like that's a song
yeah,
that probably should have made the main cut of the album because it's a crushing song. And then Reignite amplifies the band's like hardcore influence a little bit, which is something that they don't do like a whole lot, but like it's got the really punky drums and overall like every song on here slaps. Until the Day is great. I don't think I mentioned that one yet. It's got this kind of In Flames influence chorus with those guitar leads in the background. Love that. And this is to me this is their best album. That's I know that is a huge hot take. Most fans are probably gonna be like, what the hell are you talking about? But it's a very special album to me. And if you really look at the song structures on here and just the emotion that these songs convey, like it's some of the band's most creative material to date. Performance wise, everything is pretty much flawless on here, as is the production for me. It walks the line between being accessible, but also just having that really that bite to it. That's a great way of putting it. And it's a really special album to me. And there's songs on here that again, when my dogs passed away, that were really there for me. There's two songs in particular from this album, but Yeah, I'll move on. So after this, the band released another live DVD. Actually, it's titled "Beyond the Flames." Home Video Volume 2 in late 2016, named after the track from Disarm the Descent, Beyond the Flames. They continued to tour, including a celebration tour for the 15th anniversary of Alive or Just Breathing at the time. And then they began working on their eighth album. While the album was actually being worked on, Jesse Leach actually injured his vocal cords and underwent vocal surgery. But eventually, Atonement was released in August 2019. And the big deal with this record has to be the Signal Fire, which is the track that features Howard Jones making a return to the band as a guest feature. And it's also worth noting that Unleashed, the lead single, was nominated for a Grammy yet again. Tom, what are your thoughts on Atonement?
Yeah, another great album, and probably one which would be my top 4 or 5 Killswitch albums. This one I really, really like a lot that's on here. Um, Pretty aggressive album actually as well. Again, I mean, I guess a lot of Jesse's era records, but both eras of his albums are pretty aggressive. And this one, I think, is certainly not an exception to that rule. Yeah, Signal Fire featuring Howard's a really, really strong track, I think, on the album. I'm Broken too, a pretty good ballads actually on here. The Crown is King featuring, of course, Chuck Billy, who Hector interviewed recently from Testament. Yeah, really, really enjoy this album. Take Control. Love that deeper cut, the Jesse chorus on that one, and I think he does nice little variations in that chorus, the way he slightly varies it. I think it would be easy for him to, because it's such a great chorus. I think it would have been easy for him to just to have done the same chorus each time of that song, but he just varies it enough that it keeps it interesting. And it's a short track. It's such a good song, I think. Deeper in the album, Ravenous is a great follow-up because that's super heavy and aggressive. And like, yeah, kind of the evil twin to Take Control almost in a way, I suppose you could put it. But yeah, I mean, back front to back, really enjoy this album. I don't think this is as much of a dark horse as Incarnate, but it has an element of dark horse still because it's in the later periods. But I think Howard coming back kind of stopped the dark horse a bit because people were talking about him coming back for the Signal Fire, and that kind of meant that I think I can't really call this one. I think Incarnate is the true, like you say, but that's pretty much the true dark horse in their discography. But it just has a little bit of underratedness about it for me because people obviously just focus on those first 4 or 5 records from the band. But yeah, amazing album, this one, I think. Yeah, probably one of my favorite, or I say one of my favorites, middle of the ranking, but Killswitch albums are so strong in that top half that it still means I love the album. And yeah, I feel it's back to yeah, carries on the good form from albums prior to this in the Jesse return. Yeah.
For sure. So this may surprise some people, but this is actually not a record that I come back to that often. I think it's one of their weaker ones. For me, it's probably the weakest of the Jesse albums easily.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah,
Oh,
I only
oh,
really come back to about
oh.
half of the songs on here. So I'll shout out some songs. I do still have this on CD, and interestingly enough, and this might be like the only time I do this. I have it on vinyl. I've
Oh,
CD
wow.
vinyl.
Awesome.
This was like, because I remember I was like at the mall or something with my friends, and like we were in a record store. I saw that. I'm like, fuck it, I'll buy. I don't have a record player, but I'm gonna buy it. But the stuff on this record that I do love, I really really love. Like the closer, "Bite the Hand That Feeds" is
Mhm.
amazing.
That's actually
Crushing
pretty
the ending to the
awesome. Yeah.
album. It's bittersweet because I feel like in a lot of this album, they dialed back the heaviness and the experimentation and kind of went more accessible a little bit. Like Us Against the World, I Can't Be the Only One, even I Am Broken too. Like these are songs that are okay, but they don't really hit hard for me. They're just a little bit too light for me. They're just
Mm.
kind of just Killswitch light to me at least.
What do you mean?
And then there's other stuff on here like Know Your Enemy. Like they go into some odd timing, but it doesn't really add much to that song for me. It kind of it makes it, if anything, slightly less memorable. The Signal Fire, I was actually a little bit underwhelmed with it because I thought Howard was kind of underutilized in the song because
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
because
Yeah, a little bit.
has he has that screamed verse, and then
Mm.
he's in the chorus, but he's not that noticeable in the chorus mix. So
Yeah.
you never really fully hear his clean vocals in the song. So I remember being a little bit let down with the Signal Fire. It's still a solid song all the way through. Like it's aggressive. It's definitely it's very in your face. It's a solid song all the way through, and still a track that I have came back to. But I remember thinking like, okay, they probably could have given instead of doing both of them for the chorus and having Howard be less noticeable. I feel like they should have done like a Jesse chorus and then a full Howard chorus. That would have been a lot cooler. And then they both come in at the end. So I don't know. I didn't really like how the execution of this song fully. But like I said, the songs I like on here are still great. The opener, Unleashed, I love that kind of exotic, clean guitar intro, and that main riff, that main groove is fucking crushing. As sure as the sun will rise, it's a great deep cut on here. It's very straightforward and to the point, but I love the chorus on here, and just the way the song moves is great. It's got that come down before that final chorus too, which I think that's another thing that I was a little let down with on this record is that there weren't as many like quiet parts, which I think Killswitch does really well. It was the album, the songs were a lot more like
Yeah.
steady all the way through. But I also love Ravenous. Ravenous is one that
Yeah.
does do some experimenting in the structure, and it's got some great grooves and a
Yeah.
great chorus. Take Control is an interesting one for me because how this song comes off, I do agree with you that I like the chorus actually, but this song comes off to me like it's Jesse trying to sound like Howard. If you listen to it and you because it's mostly clean sung,
Yeah.
his cadences and the way he sings, especially in those verses, I feel like it was him trying to sound like Howard.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my take on it. And that's not one that have come back to a lot, but so that's about half the album for me. But also it's still a record that I would say I enjoy, but it just to me it's not one of their best. But what's really interesting though, after this record was released, they compiled and released a B-side collection titled Atonement 2 B-Sides for Charity. They released it on Record Store Day. It featured 6 B-sides that were cut out from the main cut of the record Atonement. And none of these songs should have been cut out. These 6 tracks are absolutely phenomenal. Like I have came back to this 6-song EP over the years probably twice as much as I have came back to the full album. Tom, you mentioned earlier. Did you ever listen to the B sides for this one? No. Um,
No, no.
I
Shame on
think
me.
that's the thing. Like I think it's an album. I think it's a little EP that like people probably don't know much about in the Killswitch catalog, but these songs are amazing. Like I have no idea why they were cut from the main album. Like right away, the opener to the Great Beyond. It's got this like it's got this epic, like almost Viking-esque intro where it's got some odd time qualities in it too. Most of the song is in 5/4 and it's done great. But like you hit play on the song, I feel like I'm like riding a horse down a mountain. Like it's just it's so epic. The chorus is amazing, and then there's this groove switch in the bridge that hits really hard. I'm doing all this off memory, so yeah, track 2, Hollow Convictions, one of the more straightforward ones on here, but it functions really well in that role. Track 3, Killing of Leviathan, is a crushing, like extreme metal influenced, full on hardcore track. It's nonstop the whole time. It's only about 2 minutes long, but there's a series of crushing, aggressive grooves in here. No Devotion is criminally underrated in the catalog. An amazing song. It's got an awesome stomp to it the whole time, and some beautiful, gorgeous melodies. I think that criticism I just gave Atonement about how there wasn't enough quiet parts. I think if this song was on that record, it would have fulfilled that role. But they didn't put it on the record. But it's an amazing
Mm.
song, amazing chorus. There's a ballad on here, I Feel Alive Again, which to me is better than all 3 of the ballads on the main cut of the album. Just a lot more energy to it. Lyrically, it's a lot more meaningful and relatable to me. And the closer on here, Prophets of Treason, has this exotic tinge, like really sinister, dark, almost evil sounding song that really stands alone in the catalog. So these are 6 tracks that, like I said earlier about Times of Grace, if you're a Killswitch fan and you haven't listened to this EP, I highly recommend it. These are 6 amazing songs that I think collectively are actually better than Atonement as an album. So I had to shout that out. Um, and then, after that, the Jesse and Adam actually reconvened and released another Times of Grace album that I also wanted to shout out real quick because it's another amazing record. I actually like it slightly better than the first one, but it's in a similar vein. Like it, it's some of the most creative music that they have ever done. Like some of the most creative music I've ever heard in this genre is on this second Times of Grace album, Songs of Loss and Separation. It's genre fluid and essentially limitless in a sense that the songs are they're just as raw as possible, sonically and emotionally. It has like this barren, almost bluesy feel at times, and a track like "Bleed Me" or there was the single "The Burden of Belief," the closer "Forever." All these songs, very very creative. They have like this blues tinge to them that works really well. It's like a song you would visualize like walking through the desert when you're listening to. But it works so well. The vocal dynamic on this record, once again, is great between both Jesse and Adam. And there's a song on here, "To Carry the Weight," that is an all-time favorite song for me, period. Like it's yeah, if you were to include this album as a Killswitch album, that song would probably be like top three song in the catalog.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to include it in my top three because it's not a Killswitch song. But I had to shout that out. And this and the B-side collection I just talked about both had very distinct memories for me. So the B-side collection came out right like when COVID started, and I remember like listening to that a lot during COVID times because it was ironic here in Chicago. Like we normally have like it's really cold and snowy like all the way to May, but I remember it was sometimes all the way to June. And I remember it was like a beautiful year that year weather-wise. So I remember it was always sunny, and I remember listening to that B-side collection, and I really associated with that time. And then the Times of Grace album, "Songs of Lost and Separation," it came out shortly before I went back to college. And I met a whole bunch of new friends in college, and I remember this was the album that I was listening around that time. So like these albums all have very distinct like memories for me. So I had to shout out Times of Grace again. Again, if you have not listened to this album, I cannot recommend it enough. It is some seriously amazing music. And yeah, and then after that, the band released a live album, Live at the Palladium, in June of 2022. And they kind of took their time working on their ninth album, something that kind of frustrated me a little bit because, as being such a big Killswitch fan. But they did tour sporadically throughout, and eventually, this Consequence was released in February of last year, 2025. So, Tom, what are your thoughts on this Consequence? You did a review of it, I think, right?
I don't think I reviewed this one
Oh, really?
actually,
Okay.
which is surprising. I mean, actually, I still feel like, I mean, and this along with the debut is probably the one I've listened to the least actually out of all their albums. So I do feel there's an element of me still discovering this one a little bit, but I've struggled to get into it for whatever reason, and I've not been able to place why either because I think there's some solid tracks on, but I've just not found it. I don't know. It's got some really heavy stuff on it, particularly like almost deathcore kind of stuff on this record as well at times. But I've just not found it sinking in properly with me yet. And like I said, I've not really been able to place why. But yeah, I think solid performances again. A lot of what you can expect from Killswitch. But yeah, I certainly don't think it's a bad record. It probably is at the moment because I still feel like there's an element of me familiarizing myself with it. I can't help but feel for me this might be another Incarnate type scenario where it's just still growing on me a bit. Where with Incarnate, my first kind of probably like first dozen or so listens, it was still not doing a huge amount. So it could be that kind of Incarnate situation with this Consequence. But it does have still songs on here that I really, really like. And I think it's The Fall of Us. Awesome song. And Collusion, which I think comes before it. It's actually, I don't have this on CD, so I don't have the track list in front of me for this one. But I think those two songs are standouts on this record, which come in the second half again. But yeah, it's I think it's pretty solid, but it's just not yet really sticking. Um, yeah,
That's fair. I would argue that this is their heaviest album ever. I really would.
yeah,
And
it's pretty.
I have an allegiance to this record because there were a lot of people that reviewed this album like the day after it came out, and
Yeah,
they just said, "Oh, this is just any other Killswitch record." And
yeah,
no, it's not. Like, did you listen to this album? Like, I think it might be because of how it's structured because this album is structured in a way where it's like the first half is a bit more familiar. Like you have, the opener, "Abandon Us," which is a phenomenal song, probably my favorite on the record. Some great melodies, and then "Aftermath" too, with that kind of ambient, clean guitar intro, and "Discordant Nation." It's thrashier, but it's not a whole lot different from what we've heard before. And same thing with like the "Forever Alive," the lead single, and also "I Believe." Like that's the whole first half of the album, and it is somewhat familiar Killswitch territory, but the whole second half of the record is totally new
yeah.
territory. At least like
I
90,
agree on that. I do
like,
agree on that. It does sound pretty new.
yeah,
Yep.
like 90%. Like Collusion, crushing grooves the whole time, an odd timed chorus that works really well. The Fall of Us is basically a full on death metal song. Like
Yeah.
even the chorus, even
Great.
the clean chorus, sort of, it's still full of blast beats and background screams. So, and then the tempo change at the end. That's really, I think you mentioned the
Awesome.
deathcore influence. That really shines there at the end. That's something that also stuck out to me. I think I even said that in my review that it is kind of a deathcore influence a little bit in that part. Um, Broken Glass is like this 50-50 combo of like sludge metal and death metal like the whole time. That's something Killswitch has never done before, and it sounds great. And then the closer Requiem is fucking sick, really thrashy, and it's got again some killer grooves. That main groove of the song is fucking it rips. So
It's good.
I have an allegiance to the record for sure because I think people were way too hard on it. But you know, it's a record I love, but at the same time, I will admit that I think when I reviewed it, and I did do a review of it, I scored it a 29 out of 30,
Oh
which
wow.
is obviously very high. And I think I might have had some rose tinted goggles a little bit because or rose tinted goggles, whatever the saying is, because you know there are some songs that I haven't came back to as much, like Discordant Nation, Where It Dies are two songs that I didn't really come back to much after reviewing it. But I love every other song on here. So, you know, I'd probably update my score if I could to like a 27 or 28, which is still really high. And, you know, this is still like a defining album of last year for me. It was this record and then the Spirit Box record, because they came out around the same time last year, that really was like my soundtrack to the first half of the year.
Yeah, that
And
Spirit
I
Box
was
record is thick.
yeah,
I love that one. Yeah.
and I was dealing with some stuff like mental health wise at the beginning of the year last year. And I think these records really helped me through it.
Okay.
I remember
Yeah, yeah.
I was trying to reconnect with nature a lot last year, and I remember I would go to like the woods near me and go on runs like on the trails. And this album and again the Spirit Box record really were like my soundtrack to that. So like I think that's going to be the
Makes
memory
sense.
that I most associate this record with, just trying to reconnect with nature a little bit. But you know, even though there's two tracks that I haven't get back to as much, the highlights on here are still amazing, and it's still a record that I really love. It's clearly not one of their best. But I mean, for Killswitch Engage, from me, that's not really saying anything. Like, it's still an
Yeah.
amazing record. So, yeah, that is the band up to this point, pretty much. They've been touring sporadically since the release. So now we're going to talk about our top three Killswitch Engage songs. Maybe the hardest thing I've ever had to do on my channel, to narrow down three songs for Killswitch Engage. But Tom, we're going to kick things off with what's your number three track from Killswitch Engage?
Okay. Well, this is easy for me because I did this recently in a short video. But yeah, my number three is Beyond the Flames from Disarm
Okay,
the Descent.
great one.
Yeah,
Yeah, great pick.
absolutely awesome song. I almost at times wonder whether this could have been the opener, but The Hell in Me is also a
Mhm.
great opening track
This could have been a
to
single.
Disarm the
It
Descent.
could have been a single, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah.
It's fairly accessible. So like I think this would have made a good single, but it's still a great deep cut on the album too.
Yeah, ripping song, kind of melodic death metal like as well, I think. Very fast.
Mhm.
And I like the way it kind of speeds up a little bit, I think, at the end and then cuts, but it cuts off in a way which feels right for the song, I think. So it's
And
it's a really awesome song. Yeah.
I like the kind of the bridge I really like of that song. It's got like
Yeah.
it's in like
Yeah.
a
Oh,
atmosphere.
gorgeous bridge.
He's like if
Yeah.
the lyrics says if just a touch makes you feel the rush. When he says that, I think that works
Mm.
really well. And it's got like
Oh,
those groaning
yeah.
guitars in the background. Great bridge section. Um,
Chef's kiss.
yep. So my number three, I'm going to give to Embrace the Journey Upraised off of Incarnate.
Yeah.
This was one of those two songs that I said was that I mentioned earlier was really there for me when my dogs passed away. This was also a song that I loved the first time I heard it. This was like the last single I think before the album dropped in 2016. I think it was released like literally a few days before the album dropped. Um, but phenomenal track. Structurally, it's really special. Like the intro groove, it's so heavy in the intro. It's one of the best grooves Killswitch ever wrote. I love the bass, how it starts the song, and then it's got these frantic verses that go back and forth between these more open parts and then these nonstop like discordant parts that bring to mind maybe even like a Converge or like some mathcore influence just in the verses. And then the chorus is it's one of those parts that walks the line between being positive and uplifting and also being dark. And the way Jesse just belts, I'm upraised, hits so hard. The second chorus has like this part two added to it where he, like kind of like you said earlier about take control. He kind of evolves his chorus in that
Yeah,
part, and then the bridge of the song, it drops out, and you get like this like really like textured, atmospheric, almost. You used the word shoegazy earlier about I think it falls on me, and I
yeah,
never thought of it that way, but that's actually I agree with that. I think that's a pretty good term for it. Embrace the Journey Upraised has a part with just like that too, and I remember like the days my dogs passed, like two of the worst days of my life, like listening to it was beautiful sunsets both days, which was great. And I remember listening to this part of this song, that bridge part, and just like and feeling that element of content, which is very hard, like the first day when you experience a tragedy like that. So this song,
yeah.
very, very special to me. And then the way the song ends when you get Adam D's backing vocals, really packing the song full of emotion. This is just it's such a special song to me. And it had to make my top three. So what's your pick for number two?
Nice pick. My number two is The Element of One
Okay.
from Alive or Just Breathing. And I just love every bit of the song pretty much. Like the start with the sort of clean acoustic chords, I think, where it's strumming into the getting you into the mood for a slightly moody track, I guess. And I think what I really like about this is how it returns to that kind of final chorus. It sort of the track goes kind of in all these kind of different directions, and you've touched on the structure of Killswitch songs and how interesting they can be and how unpredictable as well. And I feel like this song exemplifies the unpredictability of the band with where they choose to go in it, because you kind of have that atmospheric chorus, don't you? The element of one, but then you get that breakdown, and just absolutely incredible kind of, you know, fireworks with the guitars suddenly, and it builds and builds and builds, and then releases back into that final chorus, and it's just incredible, just brilliant, brilliant stuff. And
Yeah.
I can remember listening to this in it, they played so it's a single, and they played this in. I was talking about the London night, rock and metal nights I used to go to. And this would come on, I just get chills when this song came on. Yeah, so it's my number two.
All right. Yeah. And yeah, great pick. As I mentioned earlier about Everything Alive or Just Breathing, like that's a song for me that will forever be the soundtrack to like the first half of 2021 for me. Um,
Yeah,
great, very dynamic song too, like you said, just in the acoustic intro, and then you also get that acoustic break before that heavy bridge
oh,
section, and it's a very this is maybe the song more so than any other on Alive or Just Breathing that really walks that line 50-50 between heavy and melodic because I feel like every other track on that album is leaning more heavy, but this track is very in the middle, and they do it really well.
yeah.
Number two, I'm going to give to It Falls on Me, also off of
Oh,
very similar things, like I just said about Embrace the Journey Upraised. These two songs could probably flip two and three. They're probably tied, but phenomenal song, full of
would be
despair.
my top 10. Would be
Yeah,
my top 10, that one. Yeah,
yeah, like you said, that got kind of a spacey atmospheric bridge
yeah.
section. Again, just full of just raw emotion in there. Beautiful melodies. Just like I said about that part in Embrace the Journey, like I remember listening to that part and just feeling that element of content as I was just like watching this gorgeous sunset on one of the worst days of my life. So they're another song that's really been there for me a lot over the years. Another one that definitely hit me really hard the first time I heard it. And it's such a dynamic song again. It's got some odd time ideas. The verses are in like a 7/4 time. And then the choruses do kind of evolve. After that second chorus, you get that really calm, like quiet part with some more stripped back drums. The rare closed hi-hat, which isn't used very much drum wise in Killswitch's material, but they use it really well here.
Okay.
And it just
Yeah.
explodes into that dynamic bridge section. And despite that, it's a fairly like melodic and somewhat sludgy track most of the time.
Mm.
It still has that really like heavy outro. So again, it's a song that is like it's a masterpiece of dynamics is the best way of putting it. And it's a track that again, it's really special to me. Along with these two tracks, "It Falls on Me" and "Embrace the Journey Upraised" go hand in hand for me. They're two of my favorite songs ever, and like they will never fail to hit me right here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that is my number two pick. So, Tom, what's your pick for number one? I feel like I know it, but we'll hear it straight from
Awesome. Awesome. Well, actually, it might be surprising. I guess, right. So, my favorite Killswitch song of all time, despite me probably having a preference for the Jesse albums overall in their catalogue, my favorite song of all time from Killswitch is Rose of Sharon.
you. Oh wow.
Actually, I think you're probably thinking My Last Serenade,
Yeah.
which I might have said, that again would be in my top 10. And it's a really important song because it got me into the band, to be fair. But Rose of Sharon, I mean, because of again a night where I remember hearing this for the first time on on those huge speakers in that rock and metal nightclub, and just being with friends and drinking beers and just the table kind of like shaking from the sound of the track and Howard's roaring vocals throughout the whole song. I mean, I love the way this track just starts as well. It just doesn't waste any time. It's just straight into that dun,
True. Yeah.
and there's just no hanging around. And it's refreshing that they kind of, you have a song that just goes straight into a fast, aggressive tempo as well, like without any kind of any build up whatsoever. Almost a bit death metal like in that sense. And yeah, just a fantastic song. And obviously very emotional towards the end with that repeating, vocal line from
Well,
Howard.
it won't be long.
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think that remains my favorite song because I mean um I love this song performed live too, and it's just a huge song, just huge, and one of the more maybe I don't know what you think about this, Brady, but to me one of the more straightforward songs in some ways as well. It's I don't know, you're more of the expert probably on the musical than the technical stuff, but yeah, to me it sort of feels like it's not as complex as maybe some other songs they've done, but yeah, it kind of catches on super fast for me, this one, and I've always loved it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before I get my number one, I will shout out some honorable mentions. You can, Tom, you can do the same if you want. Um, Honorable mentions I'm gonna give to because I had to. Like I wasn't gonna give honorable mentions in these videos, but Killswitch is just a band I love so much. They have so many amazing songs that are so special to me that like I have to give honorable mentions. So I have to shout out Fixation on the Darkness and My Last Serenade, Break the Silence, Rose of Sharon, No Devotion from the Atonement B-sides, and then one I had to give one Times of Grace song per album a shout out. Worlds Apart from the first one, and then To Carry the Weight from the second one. Amazing song. Probably that'd be like my number four if you kind of Times of Grace songs. But my number one pick, probably easy to guess it because I've talked about it several times in this video, but it's got to be Always. This is just
Oh,
it's
yeah,
got to be Always. This song is so it's extremely special to me.
yeah.
It's a song that again every time I hear it, like it hits me so hard. It was the song that made me a fan, and I won't go on too much about it because like I said, I've already talked about it multiple times throughout this video. But it's Killswitch Engage essentially doing their rendition of a ballad in a sense, but it still has that darkness to it. And the vocals are amazing. I love those kind of melodic breaks where it gets quiet and you get Adam D's vocals kind of in the distant background that happens in the bridge and then also at the end. Just beautiful melodies in the song, and yeah, my favorite Killswitch song, contender for a favorite song of all time, easily. So yeah, that is it. The last question we're going to answer now is what do we want to hear from Killswitch in the future? So Tom, I'm curious, what would you like to hear on the next Killswitch Engage album?
Yeah, and that's hard. I think that's a really hard question. Because a part of me kind of, when I go to Kill Switch, I kind of go in almost wanting to hear certain things. I think in a way that the sort of their formula is their strength. However, I would quite like to hear them doing something. This is going to come really as a strange like thought, maybe in a decision on my part because I've talked about probably how I like the heavier stuff, but I would find it quite interesting if they did maybe an unplugged album because I think Jesse's got a great voice. I think they've got this enough of the melodic elements they could pull it off quite well doing kind of an unplugged kill switch record. I think it would be really interesting to hear them doing something that's quite different from anything they've done before. Um, and makes them really think about the songwriting beyond the riffs as well. And just could be fascinating to hear when really push themselves on something like that, like maybe in a pure acoustic Killswitch record. I think it'd be fascinating. A lot of people would say, no, Green Man, get lost, don't want to hear that. But I think it'd be really interesting to hear them doing something like that, an unplugged record, which is nothing. Then obviously they're known for the metalcore stuff and the classic metalcore albums, but I think it'd be really interesting to hear them because Jesse's a great singer, and they've got good songwriting, as you said, in them, lots of good songwriting and ideas. So I feel like it's in them to do an awesome acoustic album, personally.
Well, my first response to that is going to be you have to check out the Times of Grace albums.
Okay.
But aside from that, like
Yeah.
that, that's actually interesting because I think even on the Killswitch albums, when they do use an acoustic guitar, it's used very effectively. Like
Yeah.
we talked about Element of One, that's a great example. But yeah, they always use it very effectively. I think for me, um, I always had like two distinct things that I wanted to hear from Killswitch. The first one was to see them go really heavy, like way heavier.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
think this
That
consequence,
in fact, that would be my other decision.
yeah,
Would be they go just completely extreme. Yeah.
I think this
Yeah.
consequence kind of scratched that itch in the best way because I probably wouldn't want to hear a full album of just purely heavy from them, but like half of the album being familiar and half of the album being really heavy, like that's kind of what this consequence is. And I think that kind
Mm.
of scratched that itch for me. So the other one and the main one that I would like to see is a more kind of emotionally profound, dynamic, and maybe even slightly progressive album. Like if they made a full album of songs like Embrace the Journey Upraised and It Falls on Me and songs like that, like I would be ecstatic. And like just songs that I think the band isn't limiting themselves with because the Two Times of Grace albums show that when Jesse and Adam kind of just don't put any boundaries on themselves, the results are outstanding. So I
Yeah.
think
I
they
need to
could
check those out.
I think they could really pull off doing that, but still kind of having it sound like Killswitch. I don't think they would. I think they could do it in a way where they would not put any rules on themselves, and it would still kind of naturally come off like Killswitch because they would already kind of be in that mindset where this is a Killswitch album, but we're just we're gonna reach into like our soul and pull out whatever happens because Adam D has such an ear for just writing some genuinely amazing melodies, and this consequence was a much it's a very dark album overall, which I think it's good, but I would like to hear an album that is more more spiritual, more
Yeah.
atmospheric, like and stuff like that. I think they would kill it doing that. I'm not sure if they will because they're. I think this consequence is probably like because you use the term middle era syndrome to describe Incarnate, and I would agree with that. I would agree with that, and I think this consequence is now that we've gotten that album, they're reaching like legacy band status almost. So um, I'm not sure if we'll get that. I feel like they might just stick to their formula, but I would love to see them do some more experimenting. And there's two more things I want to shout out in this video. For one, um, so Times of Grace being Howard work or not Howard being Adam working with Jesse was kind of like that side project while they were still with Howard. And I hope we'll get a third Times of Grace album. It's kind of up in the air for now. I would love to hear that, but I'm very interested to hear this new project that has been started between Adam and Howard. I'm not sure if you knew about that. They have been working on an album, just the two of them, and the band is going to be called Burn Eternal.
Okay.
And I think they might have. I think they said the album was actually done, and they're just mixing and mastering it. I would love to hear it this year. I'm not sure if we will, but um, this Burn Eternal album, it will be very interesting because like Howard, since he's left Killswitch, like he had those two Devil You Know albums that were solid, and then there were the two Like the Torch albums, which I personally didn't really like that much. I just thought they were a little bland. And then he did
Yeah.
that Scion record with Jared Dines, which I did enjoy, but I feel like I feel like those all those records were kind of marketed as being like, oh, it's gonna sound like old Killswitch, and none of them really do. None of them really sound like old Killswitch. Howard sounds great on all of them, but like it sounds like something different. And I think Burn Eternal will hopefully. I'll be happy probably with whatever I hear, given that Adam D is the brainchild behind it. But I would love to hear either a Times of Grace type record with Howard instead of Jesse, or a record that just takes things back to that mid 2000s End of Heartache as Daylight Dies type sound. So that's my hopes for that record. And then I also want to shout out. just shout out Jesse Leach because he's doing that thing where he's doing handwritten lyrics for fans. So like
Oh,
you got to pay for it, but like he'll
yeah.
write lyrics for you. And I have my the entire bottom left of my leg, so my left calf is completely covered in tattoos of Killswitch Engage's album art. So
Oh, brilliant.
unfortunately, I'm not flexible enough to bring my leg up here and show everyone my tattoos.
Well, for you later.
I have Alive or Just Breathing, End of Heartache, Daylight Dies, Disarm the Descent, Incarnate, and the new one, This Consequence, all tattooed on my left calf. And I wrote to Jesse and I said, hey, I would like to get handwritten lyrics so I can tattoo the lyrics in your handwriting um, along my tattoo because there's still some kind of spaces that they could fit. So I got it about a month ago. He mailed it to me. This is what it looks like. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so he writes them on this very like kind of old timey type paper.
Yeah.
I had him write lyrics from Embrace the Journey Upraised, two from It Falls on Me, and then one from To Carry the Weight from the Times of Grace record. And then he wrote me this note here, Brady, I hope this works for you. Thank you for supporting the music and words I create, Jesse Leach. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Wow.
so that's it's awesome he's doing that. He's also doing like these collaborations where you can pay him and he'll actually do a guest feature on your song.
Oh, wow. Immenseful.
That was a little outside of my price range, unfortunately. But
Yeah, I bet. I
in
bet.
the future, if
Yeah.
he ever does that again, I would love to make that happen. Him on an Omentro song would be that'd be like a dream come true.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all we have for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I seriously can't appreciate. I can't express enough how much I appreciate it. Make sure to comment below. What are your thoughts on Killswitch catalog? How would you rank their albums? What are your top three songs from them? Just anything like that. If you have any personal stories relating to Killswitch Engage, memories associated with them, anything, I would love the comment section on this video to just be full of hardcore Killswitch Engage fans sharing their stories and sharing what's special about the band to each individual person. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to subscribe for more rock and related content. Subscribe to Tom's channel as well. He does a lot of great album reviews and such. And until next time, we will see you guys later. Peace.